Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, sitting down for my review of Saints Row. Let's dive into the deep end, shall we? This game, from top to bottom, was absolutely technically broken, and it was a complete displeasure to play. It takes a lot for something to piss me off, let alone a video game. Very blessed to do this for a living, by the way. So when I finish a game and I walk away pissed off, that is mighty impressive for a game to achieve because it is exceedingly rare. About as exceedingly rare as this game just working. But from top to bottom, Saints Row is broken, and I wasted 30 plus hours of my life on this game. The bugs, the glitches, aplenty. Combat AI not working unless engaged upon. The lighting completely broken, making it very visually distracting. The traffic loading before your very eyes and sometimes just outright disappearing. The world feels barren, empty. The missions never work. The amount of times I had to reload was downright infuriating. And not only that, the final mission in the game broke on me 4 times, including one crash. A new mechanic each time didn't work. And the sad news is that beneath the bugs and glitches here, you patch it all up, you polish it to a shine, it does not matter because Saints Row is the perfect representation of creative bankruptcy within AAA gaming. And I know some of you may think I just have a thing against checklist open worlds. I can really dig them. I loved, for example, Ghost of Tsushima, which I think fits right into that category. But Saints Row just comes up with no ideas despite having the perfect platform to go as crazy as they want to. Because as many of you know, with the drama surrounding Saints Row, people wanted them to go in the more serious Saints Row 1 and 2 direction. They took it in the 3 and 4 direction to go more comedic, more crazy. And I thought to myself, as someone who was on the outside, media blackout, this could be a fun time. That's all that really matters with Saints Row. I don't care about the writing, I don't care about the story, which, by the way, despite it not being the focus, was a downright insult. I'll get into that in a moment. But as long as it's fun, right? And it couldn't even get that. It did not embrace any of its ideas. It's a game with an identity crisis through and through, and I'm here to break it all down. But if you need the too long, didn't read, do not touch this game. And now the rest is me explaining why. So with that, if you're new here, you're into reviews, consider subscribing. Let's talk about Saints Row. I got to talk about the bugs and glitches first, because normally I do story, gameplay, and I include bugs and glitches in the gameplay section, but this game, congrats, has earned its own section for that. That's mighty impressive. You must be really broken for that to happen. You know what games also got that? Games like, oh, I don't know, Crossfire X, Fallout 76, the list goes on. Not a really impressive track record there, but let's go on, shall we? So again, the empty open world. It's apparent right when you drop in, something with this game is wrong. The world is positively lifeless because it feels like this game is built on the most brittle sticks of all time. And if the foundation crumbles, it's all gonna fall apart. The optimization here was just downright poor because, again, the world feels dead. There are even quest bugs that are beyond actually the missions themselves. Sometimes it's just a GPS waypoint, bringing me to a completely different spot on the map, or causing me to reroute endlessly until finally I'm like, I don't even know where the mission is, and then I guess around and it finally reorients me. The GPS tracker in an open world game just does not work. And we're not talking about, something like Elden Ring where it's, artistically guided so you can get around without any type of waypoint tracking. Not here. Nope. There's an incessant amount of pop-in. There's a ton of quest bugs. The combat AI is broken, as I said earlier, so combat itself is not very fun. Like, you just stand there, shoot people until they're dead, and move on. And I know that's how you describe pretty much any first or third person shooter in a very simple way, but I mean just stand there and shoot them. You really barely have to move around when the game's functioning in its best state. Like, it's just boring and broken, and that can be the worst, most deadliest combination in a video game. You know me, I'm not a graphics person. I'm predominantly focused on art style, but when a game's graphics are bad, typically I don't care. But this game, I legitimately had to check to make sure like I was using a Series X and S version, which is automatic given it was smart delivery. My brain was like, go check just to make sure. This game does not look good. In fact, again, because of the pop-in, because of the items and people and cars loading before me, I was like, this is functioning like a last-gen version. It looks like a last-gen version. This is absolutely terrible. It just does not work. And I could have pulled my hair out because of my experience. So I just had to put up front and personal because I know people will come to this video, defend the honor of Saints Row. I'm not here to detract from your favorite series. Saints Row goes a ways back for me. My first ever review code in the industry was Saints Row 4. I have a soft spot for this series, but I can't. Like, this game just isn't good as a video game, and it doesn't work as a video game. So I just had to put up front and personal here. The game is broken. Let's talk about the rest of it now, the story. So the setup is about as bad as you'd expect, but given the fact that the game is comedically driven, I kind of think that's okay, right? That's to be expected. It doesn't have to make a lot of sense logically. It could just be dumb fun. And dumb fun isn't bad in video games. In fact, it's sorely missed in a lot of them with these games that take themselves very seriously. It's appreciated that there's a game out there, especially in this case in a AAA space, that says, let's just do something crazy and dumb. But I gotta take the internet's favorite word when it is as cringe-inducing as this game is. I might have taken something trying to be serious again. And I don't want to review a game based off what I want versus what it is, but I don't know why or how certain lines of dialogue got passed into the final build of this game, but they did, and good Lord Almighty. Let's talk.
Fall in line, my big sweaty goddamn motherfucking ass.
So you start off your adventure as a member of Marshall, this sort of mercenary group in this brand new setting. I gotta say that this kind of explains why your character is good with guns, and they give him a bit of a backstory. I'm like, okay, cool. They're actually going to this effort here. From there, you and your friends that you live in an apartment with are all a part of separate gangs in this open world setting, and eventually everyone gets screwed over. You lose your job with the Marshalls. Everyone's dirt poor, and we need to pay rent. Yes, really. That is the turning point for the game. We need to pay rent for our apartment. What do? We start a goddamn criminal empire. Let's do this. Again, kind of leaning into, oh, this is just so dumb, we can do it. But eventually you start to lose favor with the audience when you just keep leaning into the idea of like, this is stupid, we can do it because it's a dumb, fun game. When you hear dialogue like this,
Sandy Kraken does not stand alone. Tapeworm is here in your hour of need.
Let this be the hour when we draw fake guns together.
To the keep!
You, the developer, try to take advantage of the audience receiving it as, oh, this is dumb fun, so we can do endless dumb things, but none of those dumb things are fun. You know, remember like the UFO missions in like Saints Row 3 or something crazy like that? You're not gonna find any of that here. They just use it as excuses to right away fun gameplay objectives and get uncreative with things. Like they're thinking about, you know, robbing a train or something. And what do they do and sit there and think, oh, we could do this or that? They just go and say, why don't we just shoot the place up? Yeah, sure, that sounds great. And that's it. And I'm like, my God, like the writing here just constantly goes down the same pathway. They don't want to create any fun mission objectives because Saints Row is a series that has become known for its wild vehicles, wild weapons, the crazy rampages that you can just go on, right? And this game, imagine a Saints Row game that has that comedic edge, or at least it's going for it, but it just never gives you the tool set that comes with that comedic edge. So you're playing almost this like very serious third-person shooter, and that's really it in a horrible comedy. That's Saints Row. And I gotta say, this game's unfunny. And I don't like unfunny. I know comedy is not easy in video games. Timing is a big part of comedy. You want to make sure that what you're delivering can not only deliver now, but to stand the test of time. Like any piece of entertainment with comedy, it's difficult to write. So I get it. But again, it stands to the reason where if you're not going to get creative with your humor, you're not going to get creative with the gameplay to kind of uplift the humor, then why do it in the first place? Again, identity crisis. So what you're doing is, yes, establishing the Saints as a criminal empire because everyone's been booted out of their respective groups. And you're like, well, let's take over the city ourselves. So that's where things really kick off. Let's get into the gameplay because a lot of this is built around the criminal empire, which is on paper a really great system that I could see a lot of fun being had with it. But unfortunately, it sets up the biggest narrative roadblock we have seen since Mafia 3. Mafia 3 being a open world game, I do have a bit of a soft spot for because the way it captures its era is so powerful and so good that I can sort of allow its mundane, repetitive gameplay objectives to exist. But in the case of Saints Saints Row, that is not the gameplay template you copy. I don't know who at Volition thought this was a great idea, but this is not the one you copy. So what happens is in your criminal empire, you will establish businesses, and these businesses will generate you money that you can spend on new clothes, new guns, upgrades for your guns, all sorts of vehicles. That stuff sounds great, and it can be great. But what happens is some of the main story objectives bar you from progression until you complete these criminal ventures. So let's say you set up, I don't know, a business in a laundromat, which is actually a human disposal service. So what you do is run that mission 8 different times over the course of like 2 to 3 hours to check off one of your criminal ventures when you got to finish 3 or 4 for the next main story mission. You know, I just want to roll with the story sometimes. Like, I like that there's open world options. That's great. We'll talk about them in a moment, but I just want to roll with the main story. But the game bars you off and forces you to participate in these mundane, repetitive activities, and it hurts the game. Remember with Mafia 3 in the case where the story was actually pretty damn good, and if you could just go through the story and occasionally participate in open world stuff, you would have a really good time with this game and you'd be really impressed with it, or at least I would have been. That's kind of the case here, but imagine the story's awful, the writing's terrible, the gameplay is absolutely tragic. And that's what you've got with Saints Row, like the actual skeleton of Mafia 3, but none of the good parts about it. So I mentioned the open world. It's got a lot going on here. Every district has its set of threats, side hustles, which are your side missions. There are discoveries that you can make, and you can bring them back to your Saints Row base set up at the church, and you can decorate the base however you see fit. There are various stores that you can shop at. There's these side hustles known as Atcha, where you leave reviews and they turn into horde modes. There's choplifting, where you can get into like a helicopter and fly around. There's wanted missions, where you can go around the map and take out enemies for additional cash. There's plenty of things to do in this game. Unfortunately, none of them are really diverse enough and make use of the tool set that exists within the game. A lot of the missions, especially the main story missions, devolve into like Gears of War judgment level defend this area type stuff while you listen to NPCs drone on with absolutely terrible jokes. It is a insufferable experience at times, and it's a shame because, again, I think the loop here actually could have been good if it existed to the side of the story, and by the way, the game worked, but it just isn't fun, and it doesn't make enough fun with the ideas it has. It just feels like you're really truly checking off boxes, like those threats I mentioned. You'll go to an area, blow up one van, you completed it, good job. You'll go to another area, killed like 3 enemies, completed it, good job. And it's just a rinse and repeat where there's no ambition, there's no creative energy throughout this entire product, I feel. As you complete these objectives, you're gonna earn skills. These are things that you can use in combat, like throwing a grenade. You can get some health upgrades, you can get proximity mines, and you also get perks. These are buffs like running fast when your health is low. So there is a progression system. You cap out at level 20, you're pretty much gonna be there by the end of the game. And not only that, but there are progressions through challenges for each vehicle, challenges for each weapon. Like the skeleton is there for fun progression, but for example, when I maxed out my assault rifle, my 3-burst assault rifle, it didn't really matter because the change to the assault rifle, which you got via the upgrade, was not impressive. It had more power, and that was it. So when I killed an enemy, it did a little more damage and it sent them flying a little bit further, and that was it. Obviously, there's a case-by-case basis here, but it will underwhelm you when it delivers on its promised rewards. That is another frustrating thing. With the loop being forced upon you, the least you could do is give me fun things to mess around with it in, and I don't even think it does that well enough. There are the occasional cool surprises like a hover bike with a cool laser cannon on it. That stuff is great, and that's where this game shines, when it's giving you like an amazing vehicle and romping through a mission, causing true chaos. That stuff can be fun when it works. That stuff can be fun, but it's so exceedingly rare, it's almost borderline not worth mentioning. And I say that as a game reviewer. It's my job to mention these types of things. But anyway, another aspect of combat that you'll want to pay attention to is the way you get health back. So there's no health pickups, there's no medical items, there's no food you eat or anything like that. The way you get health is by, as you mow down enemies, you'll run up to one of them, you'll execute them, you'll get like a small bar of health back. It is what it is, I guess, because the combat AI barely worked, so it didn't matter. I didn't have to worry about dying almost ever. But I feel like this game eventually became very self-aware that it didn't work, because even things like the regenning of health, they didn't give you much because they kind of were like, you don't really need this. It's just sort of there so you can do something different in combat. So that was one aspect of combat. Otherwise, it's a third-person shooter that Call me crazy here, but I just played Saints Row the Third with Kev Do It for a video on his channel a couple of months ago. And it was my first time going back to this game since the 360 days. That game still plays kind of well, and I was kind of surprised when playing Saints Row that this game feels so incomplete that even the shooting feels worse than prior entries. And that's really tough to do. It's hard to show, but it's really a feel thing. The movement felt clunky, the field of view was a little too close, the aiming wasn't as snappy, but the combat AI not being as reactive, it wasn't fun. The guns weren't as punchy, the reticle and reticle spread just wasn't right, didn't feel tight enough. It is just, again, crumbling beneath its own weight, and its ambitions aren't even sky high. That's the sad part. Mesh that with a game that is downright silent, and it's a weird experience. You know, usually when a mission kicks up, and this game does have those missions where like a song will hit and it's designed to provide a vibe, a feeling, you're like, okay, cool, here we go, I like this. There is very little of that. I'm not asking for like the soundtrack drops. I'm talking about just like ambient action music. So a lot of missions are just played in pure silence.
This is not how I thought my day would go. At least this is better than speed dating.
It's again very strange because it feels like no one looked back at some of the older Saints Row games and tried to figure out what made them work. They just started from the ground up. And the reason that's important to mention is because this is a studio that's made 5 video games. We're talking about Saints Row 1, 2, 3, 4, and by the way, you may have forgot, Agents of Mayhem. So they've made 5 games, but I can't emphasize enough that Saints Row well and truly feels like the studio's first game, because it's that much of a step back creatively, it's that much of a step back technically, that I feel like people are gonna think like, oh, this is Volition's first outing. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I know how tough it is to make a game. I've laid my hands on game engines. I know how difficult it is, but this is just unacceptable, and you gotta call it as it is. You can play this game in co-op if you so desire. I personally did not because I am a good friend. I decided not to force anyone to participate in this silly social experiment with me. And that's basically all Saints Row offers from top to bottom. Its soundtrack pickings are actually kind of good. They have this one radio station called Tumbleweed, which plays like some tracks from New Vegas. Yeah, my Fallout fandom came out a bit in that one. I was digging that, sometimes romping around the desert while that track hits. You can again get a feel for what the game is going for. But otherwise, this game suffers from an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to be. Its writing is downright terrible. That's, I guess, for many people acceptable because it's trying to be comedic, but even then, the comedy isn't good, which ties back into the bad writing. The gameplay is unfun. The systems are there for something that could be a satisfying loop, but completing them is downright impossible because the game doesn't work. Then the missions themselves and the main story just don't work. The opposite of the Todd Howard slogan here. Get what I'm saying? So to me, Saints Row gets a very rare rating from me, which is an outright never touch. This game, if I could erase it from my experience, I would, because you may be wondering, what's the aggression, Matty? Like, you're a chill dude. What's going on here? Look, I'll be real with you. I had a bit of an epiphany with this game. Time matters, right? We're all on this planet for a limited time. 30 hours is a lot of time. 30 plus hours is a lot of time. And spending 30 plus hours with something I positively did not like, I feel a lot more impassioned when I really don't like something like this to dive into why it must be avoided. Because there's experiences I have where maybe it wasn't for me, but I could see it being for someone else. But there's games like this that just, I can't simply recommend at all on any level of a sale. I really did not enjoy my time with Saints Row. And I have to say, stay far away from it. A very rare, never touch rating from me. That's all I gotta say about this game. I'm sure this will be a joy in the comments, but I gotta keep it real. I'm sorry if you were looking forward to this game. I'm not here to crush your hopes and dreams, but do yourself a favor, play something else. What do you think about Saints Row and what many reviewers are saying? I don't know what they're saying because I'm recording this before embargo, but looking forward to the discourse. Take great care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.